tonight we're going to talk about alien implants. And tonight I have a guest in the studio that is Derrel Sims, and he has a lot of the same experience that I have. So Derrel, are you there?
I am here and ready to go.
That's good, finally. For me, I had my first close encounters when I was 3 years old, and I remember very good that this little gray creature was coming through the wall and coming in up in the front of the crib and looked at me. And I understood that you also have close encounters like that, but you were 4 years old, wasn't you?
I was 4 years old, and the entity, I woke up is not the right word. I was switched on, basically. I realized I was in an altered state. Something was wrong. And I opened my eyes and realized there's someone in the room. And I could see this entity walking away from me. He was very white, skinny, very skinny, almost like a stick figure. And he had a large bulbous head. And he was walking toward the wall. And I thought to myself, he's going to bump in the wall. Who is that? And I didn't realize he had come through the wall. And as soon as I thought that, he apparently overheard my thoughts, and he turned around and looked at me, and I heard him speak through his mind, because I could hear it in my mind. He said, "It's awake." He was speaking about me, and I was the it. And when I was very surprised, and I didn't understand any of this at all. I wasn't scared. I wasn't paralyzed, wasn't afraid or anything. And I sat up in bed and I was looking at him like, what is that? And as I looked at him, he had a perfectly white face, a bulbous head, very large head. And his eyes were perfectly round and they were black. They were large, about 1.5 inches across each, and they were perfectly round. And I guess the difference between mine and yours was mine was like an older Ford model, and yours was a modern Lexus or something model. But yours was different. It's more modern, I guess. But
yeah, I remember I had the same kind of conversation that we were doing it telepathically, but we didn't speak. Mm-hmm. And I also remember that in the beginning I was trying to say something to this creature, but I realized very quickly that I didn't need to say anything. So yeah.
That's true. The weird thing about him, as I noticed, as little kids would, I noticed he didn't have any clothes on. It was wintertime. It was very cold. So I couldn't understand, where are your clothes? And I looked and I realized he doesn't have a TT. He doesn't have a genitalia, and he doesn't have a belly button. So it took me years later before I finally figured out that he got here some other way. He wasn't born. He was hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured, but he didn't get here the way we did. He didn't have a navel or a genitalia, so he got here somewhere differently.
Yeah, I guess that since I was 1 year younger than you, I didn't even thinking about that if he had a TT or a belly button or anything like that. For me, when he was leaving, I was just getting the feeling in my head that, oh, it was Santa Claus, because I heard my mother tell me that Santa Claus would be coming soon. So yeah, but of course, when Christmas came and I was so looking forward to meet Santa again, that was something completely different. And I was terrified about that human thing in the TV room with the false beard and the plastic face. And no, I didn't like it. It wasn't my Santa.
That one was totally fake.
Yeah, that one was fake.
It really was. The other one was real. I wasn't afraid until finally at that point he realized he had to fix me, make me not remember. And I could hear him thinking about that. And at that point, his eyes moved in a certain way. And instantly I became paralyzed with a terrible fear. I had never experienced anything like that before. And after, of course, many years investigating these cases, I have 2,000 cases worldwide now. And it was amazing to me because now I realize he transferred his fear to me. I didn't have that fear. This was something he had. And he transferred his fear to me. and I was just stunned. I couldn't move, and then he started coming toward me. At that point, I was very frightened. And then I pushed so hard against my little bed and the wall, it pushed the bed apart, and I fell down, wrapped up in the covers, and bounced my little head off the floor. And he lifted up these covers of the bed and looked underneath it, and with his large bulbous head and his big black eyes, he put his black eyes next to mine, and he tried to make me think he was a clown. That was the image he wanted to leave, that I had a bad dream of a clown. And I kept shaking my head, no, 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 because I wanted to remember him for what he was, not for what he wanted me to think he was.
But did he do something to you before he left, or?
He just, they put me back in the bed, pushed the bed back right, I'm sure, because I woke up in the morning and everything was okay. And my parents realized I was very distraught, and I never would tell them what was wrong or what happened. And the next night they put me in the bed with them because they realized I was very upset. And to my shock and amazement, I woke up again very quickly, opened my eyes, I realized something was wrong. And there was the same alien at the end of the bed with another one that looks just like him. And again, they took me that night as well. And I was just shocked, but I never told my parents. My mother saw me on the TV show Ancient Aliens, and she said, I mean, I knew you were an investigator, but they said you were an abductee. That's just not true. I said, actually, it is. She's 80 some years old, and she just now found out I'm an abductee. I never told her.
And for me, my mother, she didn't understand it in the beginning, because I was talking about Santa. I was using that word for him. But later on, we have been talking a lot about this subject. And then she actually understood it, because she has seen them, my grandfather has seen them, and a lot of other people in the family have seen them over generations. So there's nothing new.
That's true. In most cases, we figured out back in the 1980s that these, if you've had an event in your life, it is highly likely someone else in your family or your family lineage, your aunts, uncles, grandmother, grandpa, someone else, if you will talk to them privately, you'll find that they've had these events too.
Yeah. But how many years did it take from you were 4 years old till you have a new close encounters? Do you have many of them?
I've had about 10 events over 13 years. At age 17, my events ended violently, and I've not had any events since then. But what started me as the alien hunter is they came and got my son when he was 6 years old. That upset me a great deal, because he had the same horrific event as my last event. That was his first event, and it was quite traumatizing for him.
But do you remember what they were doing to you?
I remember some of the events. When I was 12 years old, they mimicked my mother's voice, like they used the image of Santa Claus to you. They mimicked my mother's voice, and I heard her, and she's in another part of the house, which made no sense at 3 o'clock in the morning. And she says, go outside and look at the Pentine, which was a constellation which doesn't exist. And I knew exactly what it was. I walked outside, and there was this bright light waiting for me. And the next thing I realized after this bright light is I'm inside a craft in a circular room on a table with my feet elevated 11 degrees. And there's the same handler, the one that picked me up when I was little. And then there was a taller one that looked just like him, I referred to as the doctor. And I overhear what they're going to do to me. And I'm crying, because I can't believe they're going to do these terrible things to me that I hear them discussing. They're going to, they cut a large hole in the inside of my nasal septum. They also put an implant up my nasal passage with a long needle-like device about 9 inches long. and it was very painful, and they did not use any anesthesia at all. It was quite traumatizing.
What do you think that they, why, how to say it? Do you have any idea what they were putting there and what it was for?
Well, the long needle-like device they had a silver sphere on the end of it, and when they pulled
sphere
it,
is like a force
like
thing,
like a little BB, like a little tiny ball on the end of it.
Okay.
And when they drove it up my nasal passage, when they brought the needle back out, it didn't have the silver sphere on the end of it, but it had blood all over it. So the silver sphere was located back in my nasal passage, back behind my eye. I could feel it go way back in there. And later I found a man in Florida who claimed the same thing. He said in 1960, I had the same event. Well, I thought he was probably making this up, but he sent me his x-rays and I was shocked. And he still has, I don't have the silver sphere there anymore. They came back and got it. But this man still has the silver sphere behind his eye, located in his brain, just exactly in the same spot that I claimed I had mine. So that's the only evidence I have is actually his event.
When it comes to these needles, do you remember if they were stuck on some kind of arms thing, look like things, and that was stuck on the helmet?
No, what I had in my circumstance was this doctor type had the thing in his hand. Now, there may have been something attached to his hand, a wire or something, I don't know. All I could see was his hand, and his face was very close to mine, so my field of view is very limited, and I can see this needle-like device going up my nasal passage, of course, and they jammed it, and it broke the bones in my nose back here. It was very horrible.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking that is because that I was, when I was around 30 years old, when I had the last close encounters, then they were putting this helmet thing on me. And they had this kind of arms around like this, with this kind of needle things, but it was like little forks on the end of them that I was going to put up on my nose. But they also had the needles that was going into my ears. And the thing was that I was waking up that morning, I had the mark after something metal thing that was still the mark on my eyelids and my face. I was still sore from the nose and this gray greenish dry matter from my nose and from my eyes. So of course, first I was thinking that I was getting sick, but it wasn't.
That's true. Usually they will use something to hold you in place because the pain is they don't want you moving. One, because they want the process to be worked, and sometimes some of our abductees come back from their events with strap marks or what we call procedural things, like where they held your head like that. And sometimes the alien will hold it himself with his hand. If they do that, I always tell people to check themselves with a black light to see if there's any fluorescence on them. And if the fluorescence will not wash off and they've had an event within 24 hours, it's possible you're actually looking at the physical DNA evidence of them when they touched you or used an instrument on you.
After these events, can you remember if you were getting light sensitive and your hearing was getting very sensitive and smelling and yeah, everything, that you are high sensitive afterwards? Sometimes
the physical effects from these events will be manifest. One of the things that many abductees report is xerophthalmia, or they become light sensitive, and they actually have a problem with night blindness later. Sometimes we think that's because they use a very intense bright light, like they did over me, very intense bright light, and that it affects us in some way and will affect our vision. Sometimes it's increased, sometimes it is decreased.
Yeah, because I remember when I was getting back from that cabin, because in that cabin there was no electricity at all. So when they was bringing me back, then I can see the huge difference, because you know I had a mobile phone charger, and normally I could just put it in the wall, charge my phone, that's it. But now the sound was like, you know, when the microphone is like it's screaming, that kind of voice, that sound is terrible. That was the sound.
Yes.
So I could turn my back on it, and they can take it in and out, and I can tell them when it was in, because it was just terrible. And even now, of course, my hearing has gone a little bit more back to normal.
Sure.
I remember it's 2 years ago, I think, I was over to a friend's place in the UK, and I was going to, yeah, he was giving me his bedroom. And the first thing I'm asking, do you have a clock in there? Oh, don't worry, it's a digital. Doesn't matter. So he removed it, but turn it off, but I could still hear it. Zzz. So you know what? He had to turn off the power on the wall.
I visited some friends of mine this last weekend in Austin, Texas, and we had to take their clock that ticked on the wall, had to take it out of the room. I can't, it's like it's banging. It's so loud to me. It's too much.
So, you know, Odd Gunnar, our old dear friend, those times when I was sleeping over there on the sofa in the TV room, next day they will always look for where is the clock that was hanging on the wall, because I have taken it down and put it into the office or under some pillows, or hiding it away.
I had to hide this one in another room. I couldn't, I put it back up so they wouldn't notice, but I do that.
Yeah. But do you have any idea why they are doing it?
I think we become super sensitive to certain things. It's the kind of the chicken or the egg type thing. We're not sure whether we're that way before we get there, or it gets accelerated because of the events. I think that it gets accelerated because of the events. I think some of us can even see into the infrared or the ultraviolet range more so than other people, but we're wanting to do some testing in that realm as well. And if I come back to Norway, that's a big hint, then I would love to do some testing with you as well. You are a prime candidate.
Yeah, I will do that. I'll join in. Yeah, no, because the reason why I'm asking too is because that I think that a lot of the abilities that I have been experiencing over the years, like for instance, now I'm starting to work on my second book that are about astrophysics. I have no education at all with astrophysics. But if you start talking about astrophysics, I'm seeing it in front of me like a film as I see you. And when I was in Bulgaria now, I was talking with people that have been professors in astrophysics for over 40 years, and we have no problems to talk to each other.
That's true. I was speaking with a man who's degreed in nuclear physics, and we were talking about Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And I said, actually, that you can. He said, well, you can't know. You can know all about where an object is, but you can't know, like a pencil, where it's going to fall. You can't know that. I said, yes, you can. He said, no, you can't. That's yes, you can. He said, no, you can't. Later, I was reading a top professor says you actually can know the location and the position of something if you could know beforehand. Where, and of course, everybody says, well, you can't know the future, so but that's not completely true, because there are some people that actually do know events before they actually occur. It's very rare, but that's not the point. The point is that if you could go to the future, you would know the answer to both the questions. And I'll give you a quick example. This is kind of bizarre, perhaps, for your audience, but I was working with my father one day, constructing some homes, and one of our friends went to get some Cokes for us for a break. He comes back, and I've got this little hummingbird in my hand. And he was stunned. He said, is it injured? And I said, no. And he says, well, how did it get there? And I said, I stuck my hand out and he commanded it to fly down in there, and he did. He said, well, I know that didn't happen. I said, okay. I reached up with my martial arts skill and grabbed it in midair and didn't harm its feather. He said, I know that didn't happen because they're too fast. And I opened my hand and it flew away instantly. And my dad just stood there and smiled. And the next day, my friend went to get Cokes again at 10 o'clock in the morning for our break. He comes back, and my father has a little hummingbird in his hand. And now he's really stunned. But the point is that it goes back to Heisenberg uncertainty principle. If you can know both, you can actually perceive literally when something's going to occur. And literally, you can reach up and grab something because you know the event when it's going to occur. And that's what happened in both our cases. And I can't do that every time, never claim to. It did happen twice, and that's the best explanation I can give anybody for it.
For me, I'm preferring to have my implants stuck, because there's several people that have been asking, why don't you take them out? And as I said that, you know what, since they are symmetrical placed, they are there for a reason. And for me, I don't think that they are there to harm me in any way. For me, I feel that they are more bringing up or heightening up my abilities.
Well, I think that it's important for me, from a research point of view, to study a lot of people wanted their implants out. Others did not. I think it's important to study them in situ or in the person, active as they are, so that you can learn a lot more about them and about what they're doing and so on and so on. It makes sense to leave them in, and certainly in your case.
And for me, I don't have the same experience as you. For me, they haven't frightening me in that way, because they are more giving me the feeling that like the first one when I was 3 years old, they were coming in there to see if I was okay.
Yes,
that was it, and then they left.
And they, as I said, I think that it's. Look, I did a presentation for 250 surgeons at John Muir Medical Hospital in 1994. I was asked to go in and speak to them about medical complications of alleged alien human contact. And of course, at that time, no one had done any surgeries on any of these. So no one even knew it existed. Nobody believed it. And the doctors there were just all stunned, because this is a medical presentation for continuing education for their work. And here I am talking about alien implants, and they're just like stunned. The good news is that 3 doctors came on board to help us with our research afterward, because they were so impressed. But I made 4 major predictions there about implants. If we ever found them and ever did surgery on someone with an actual alien implant, these things will be true in these events. And they're all sitting there stunned, because medically that just is not possible. I said that, number one, that the implant himself would not be would not be human made, that it was discernible that it would not be human made. There would be no signs of technology, that it would be surrounded by a biological mechanism that would not be native to that part of the body, and that there would be no signs of inflammatory response, either chronic or acute. Now, to the medical people, that kind of doesn't make sense. But when we did the first surgery, the 2 surgeons involved were like stunned, because when the pathology report came back, it showed those 4 things were true that I had mentioned in to those doctors. My point being simply that one of the doctors said, how in God's name did you know that to be true before you ever did the surgeries? I said, because I was there. I've been in these events before. And of course, in my own event, I remembered a lot about it. And like yourself about astrophysics, you know things about things you're not supposed to know. And I apparently do.
Yeah. So that was back in '94. When did you start working with Dr. Lear?
Dr. Lear I met him in 1995. He did not believe any of this. He thought it was all a bunch of bunk, that it was somebody made all this stuff up. Then I showed him some x-rays of a lady with an object in her foot, because he was the foot doctor. And he was more than surprised. He said, well, that looks like a surgical clip from an osteotomy. I said, that's what I thought. And I told her so, and she's never had a previous surgery. Well, he was surprised at that point. So I got him to, since he was a foot doctor, to come on board with me, and I mentored him in this process. And he still didn't believe it. And when later a group of people called the National Institute for Discovery Science under Robert Bigelow offered to do and his crew, and about 18 scientists were involved, I think, in the NIDS program then. They said, if you will pick out the implants you'd like studied, we'll pay for the study. So I told them we would do that if the study would be only peer reviewed and it would not, no one would know where these objects came from. They agreed, and they were very excited. And we sent the objects off, and they were sent to Los Alamos, where they constructed a special microscope to analyze them. And they found 11 different elements around the implants that made no sense, because what they found was the objects were a rare meteorite from outer space, from the Widmanstatten or the Yautsheng meteorite. These things are little tiny quarter-inch long needle-like projections, and it made no sense to them whatsoever. Now, you got to understand, these scientists did not know this was alien related. All they know is they got the materials from Robert Bigelow, who is part of the aerospace industry, and they had no clue. So they sent them on later to New Mexico Tech to do more of a qualitative analysis, and they found a great deal more involved in the implants, and they were just stunned. And unfortunately, we had a mishap. The agreement I had with everyone was that no one could know anything. This had to be a blinded study. And unfortunately, my partner at the time, Roger Lear, called up the scientists involved and got them on the phone and said, "What did you find?" And they said, "Well, it's rather rare meteorite, blah, blah, blah." And he says, "Oh, well, that's interesting, because those are alien implants. They came from the human body." Well, that just, of course, destroyed the study in terms of a blinded study. Now they know where they came from. And I was so angry. I was really upset that he did that. And long story short, is they ran for cover. They wanted out of the deal at that point. And that's why you don't tell anybody anything about what you're studying until the science is over. Fortunately, I have the original study, and it was sent to me. And then they sent the amended one, which was after they found out what Roger Lear had told them. They tried to change some stuff. I have both reports, so that's the good news.
Now, it's very typical that people that are working with this kind of stuff, like people that are having this chiropractical centers. When I was going to this center to do the x-rays, I was coming between the other customers, and my name was not even putting on the list. I was just getting in there like a ghost, taking the pictures, looking at the pictures, and then out again. But of course, I had to demonstrate a little bit for the doctor there, because me and Odd Gunnar, we were asking him, in your education, is it possible for the humans to have magnets sticking on them, on the body? And he said, no chance. So he was very surprised when I could actually just take a magnet, a little neodymium magnet, and put it on my nose, and it will not fall off. So he said, that's not possible. But I said, you know what? That is possible. And I have plenty of them.
Things are impossible to them because they haven't seen, or they don't know what's involved. When you're doing this sort of thing like I do and going around the world, in fact, I've done 25 implant surgeries that I've conducted, and the last one I conducted was in India in 3.5 years ago. And the point is that we've seen things that are simply amazing. And we're just on the cusp of this study. And I'm hoping that we will get a good university, preferably, I've got one picked out in Canada, I hope it will work out in, that will be able to do a study of a number of the objects that we have retrieved, so that we can literally ring the dinner bell, so to speak. In other words, use different technologies to see if we can turn them on, to see if they light up, so to speak.
Are they very much the same kind of implants you find, or is a big range of it?
It's a large range. The original objects we found were small needle-like projections, a 1/4 inch long, maybe a 1/16 of an inch wide. One of them had a crystalline belt around it. It was magnetic. The other one was not magnetic. There were 3 and one woman alone. One was not magnetic. The other 2 were. And then we found one in a man's hand. And it's just absolutely amazing. We found 8 little spheres, like little tiny pinhead gold spheres that were in a little girl's nose in her nasal passage, just placed there. And they were so small, they're about the size of a pinhead. They're so small. I have 2 of those that I want to have examined. And we've got different types of objects. An ocular implant. It looks like a tiny, literally, the best way to describe it is it looks like an egg with the end of it cut off so that you can see inside of it. We think it housed a biological camera. So a lot of these things are as different as night and day. And for me or anyone to say, oh, they're all the same, they're simply not. They do different things for different reasons. I suspect yours are for a different purpose altogether, and that's why they should be studied.
Have you ever find anyone else that also have that many as I have, and that they are symmetrical placed?
We've got people that have they got magnetic ones as well on their body, on their back, and on their face, similar to you. So I'm wanting to keep a lot of that apart from you, not as a secret, but so that I can use it as a blinded study so that you won't know the details. So that when we test you, we will then test the 2. And then after that's all finished, said and done, well, I want you to introduce you to these people so that you can have your own conversation with them. And I would love to listen to the conversation between you and them and their experiences apart from me.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because it's always like that people that have really experienced something, they are very easily on the same page as other people that also had the same experience, because they can recognize different things what the other people are talking about.
That's really true, and it's important to, for the sake of the science, so to speak, to keep everything apart, do the studies, do the research, have the data input done, and then to me, bring the 2 groups together, the people together, and watch their interaction and see what it is that they find that's similar, dissimilar, likes, not likes. A good example is the first 2 people I took for surgery. The 2 people didn't even like each other. But that's incredible, because when they finally started discussing their cases, and I never even, they still don't know to this day that their stories are so intertwined that it's amazing. They thought their stories were totally different. They've never met each other, never seen each other, but they both have a mathematical aspect of their case, like a Moebius strip, like a piece of paper that you, like little kids put together, like a link in a piece of paper where they glue together. You put a twist in it, and now you have a piece of paper that has only one side. Well, their mathematical construct is of 3 Moebius strips intertwined to each other, which makes an amazing mathematical computation. That's fascinating in itself. And what's more interesting to me is this, that she was inside the craft, and in the craft she saw 3 gigantic Moebius strip figure 8 type cylinders that were clear, that had a bowling ball size type object going inside of each one of them, making the most wonderful noise. She thought that was what powered the craft. Again, neither one of them had any clue about each other's knowledge about this. It's just absolutely amazing to me.
That's good. But you know what, there's another thing too that I think is very good with you, when you are meeting all these people that are telling their stories, because it's very difficult for people that have experienced something that no one else has seen, and even then to try to tell their story and actually getting other person to believe them. is that you have your own experiences. So that makes you unique. And you know what, I think that's very good, because over the years, for myself, when I've been meeting different kind of people on different conferences and so on, organizers and everything, I'm so sick and tired of people that perhaps have seen a dot in the sky, perhaps, and they are going to evaluate me if I'm trustworthy or not.
Right. I had a conversation with, there's a difference between researchers and investigators. Researchers collect a lot of data, a lot of information, collate it. Maybe they're really good at what they do. I don't argue that. But there's a difference between that and a true investigator. I had a conference last month that I sponsored, and it was all Native American Indian conference. And in it, two of them were Navajo Rangers, and they sat there and agreed to be 100%. They said, we're real investigators like you. Most people are not investigators, they're researchers. By that, he says, we've been in the field, we do this, we know this, we look at it, we analyze it, we're police officers like yourself. We know what we're doing. I said, that's totally true. I said, I've talked to other researchers that, and I use the word researcher, not as a bad term, it's just a difference in perspective. And I tell many of these researchers, you're not an abductee, you're not a contactee, you've never seen a UFO, you've never seen a flying saucer, you've never had any of these experiences. You don't know for sure what's true or what isn't. All you know is what people have told you or what you collated and what you hope is true, because you can't prove it. You weren't there. So in a court of law, your testimony is useless. You're a researcher, and that's fine. You're not a person that's been in the events themselves. You don't actually know. I said, and people, have you ever seen an alien? I said, I've been in his brain as well as he's been in mine, so to speak. I know what he thinks. I know how he thinks. I know the logic of the system that he uses. We've done a lot of research in that area. And these are areas that people don't even talk about, because they're more interested in my alien implants or my evidence or something like that, but they're not really interested in the fact is that how the entities, why they're here, what they're doing, how they're doing it. All that's interesting to me. I want to know every aspect of this phenomenon, all of it.
And for me, I also think that that's also a thing that when it comes to a lot of the conferences, they are very, very into the old cases all the time. And I think that, are they doing that because it's too scary to actually investigate the real thing that are walking between them? Because I'm not alone, you're not alone. There are many, many, many of us that are abductees. So why don't they use the time to research and investigate our cases instead of trying to dig up something or talk about the old stuff? They can't even figure out what that is.
To me, we have to take the best evidence, like for just the implants as an example. Number one, the original implants that I have, the things that I have, need to bring all of those. And we also need to bring eyewitnesses and people, especially who have implants in them, like you, all to the table, so to speak. And all of it should be tested at the same time to find out, to see if, for instance, someone like you as an example, to see if you activate some of the implants or they have any association with you that are already out, or to see if you have any association with other people who have similar anomalies like magnetics, or have implants that are non-magnetic, if there's any association between any of them. There needs to be a good study done to see if all these things, if they collate, if they work, if they don't work. We have absolutely no knowledge of this. We need to know.
And I guess that there are not so many people either. How many besides you are actually investigating this stuff?
The actual alien implants?
Yeah.
I'm the only one that I know of. I get people call me, like one guy called years ago, he said, well, we do our alien implant stuff too. And I said, okay, well, talk to me. He said, we had this guy that had an object in his scrotum, and the surgeon, he said, he was cutting on the object, and he cut he said he didn't see that there were these little clear cilia on this silver sphere in this guy's scrotum, and he cut them off. He cut the scrotum, not the scrotum, but he cut the silver sphere. It had these little tentacles on it, and he cut them off because he couldn't see them. And I said, why didn't you call me when this happened? Why didn't you call me? I would have told you that. Now you destroyed the implant, and you want to call me and tell me about how well you butchered this person and how bad what you did to the implant? I said, have a nice day. And I hung up on him. You don't call people after the fact. You let them know, you collate your stuff. I said, I would have told you that it's a silver spear. I said, the guy will end up with, he either has had or will have a sexual dysfunction for 6 months to 2 years as a result of that type of an implant. I said, all he had to do was ask, but he didn't. So they can go do whatever they want to. That's fine with me.
No, I think that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done when it comes to the UFO community. As I have mentioned before too, when I was talking with Kathleen Martin, that every serious UFO community, they should have their inner circle with experiencers and people that are very good when it comes to how the brain works and all this, and a lot of physics too. That would also help. That sure. People that are having close encounters, that they have somewhere to turn to, because the worst thing they can do is to turn to the closest family or to the friends, or a lot of times even to the UFO community, because they will just perhaps listen to your story and then will just wave you off, and they don't take you seriously.
That's true. If people that are listening to our program today, they can contact you, of course, or me, and they can contact me at alienhunter.org, and I answer all my emails personally. If I don't answer someone's email, it's because they didn't get it. So just resend it. But implants or any of the physical evidence, I look at all kinds of evidence, but implants in particular are really important. And people, I tell them that one of the best things you can do is we need to do testing before you ever decide to do anything else. Don't go do surgery. Don't do anything until things are tested, until things are evaluated. It's not a good idea to just go remove these just because you want them out.
And for me, now I was thinking that when you're having your first close encounter and you are terrified, then you are, I guess that implants is not the first thing that you're thinking about. Then you are just thinking that you need someone to talk to. And that person that you are going to talk to, they need to have their feet on the ground and the head in the sky, so they are balanced. So I agree. Talking with the right people. That's very important.
I discovered implants in 1960 in my own event, simply because I was there. I studied another case before in the 80s. I was looking for this case in Brazil. I'd heard about it, but there was no real internet back then. And I later found out Dr. J. Allen Hynek was looking for the same person. Well, the interesting thing is I found this person several years ago, and she had an implant in her brain the size, it looks like a lifesaver. It's so big. And they found it in her brain accidentally. She had been in a car wreck, and what happened was they took an x-ray from the bottom of her jaw because they thought she had hit her jaw in the car wreck. They thought she had damaged her teeth or her jaw. And they found this thing inside her skull, and the doctor looked at it and said, "What is that?" She said, "I don't know." But she never put it together that her abduction encounters was involved with that. Later, 2 years later, that object was moved, in my opinion, from one hemisphere to the other one. It's in the x-rays, it's in one hemisphere. 2 years later, it's in another hemisphere. Wow. So was stunned. It's actually I wrote a book on implants, and it's on the front cover of my book because it's just absolutely astounding. She and I are best friends, like you and I. We're just best friends, and and that object later disappeared. It was removed. Now she has a large object inside her arm, and she wants it removed. She is a contactee, not an abductee like me, but a contactee, and she wants the object removed. But I want to do some testing long before we do anything like that. It's amazing stuff.
What's the name of your book?
The name of the book is it's literally Alien Implants, and you can find it on the website at alienhunter.org. And the amazing thing about her is that this object is placed inside her arm. You can feel it moving around, and what's incredible about it, this just doesn't make any sense to me. I told her, go get me an x-ray of it. She gets an x-ray and it doesn't show up. But if you go on my website, you can see her playing with it under her arm. It's huge. It's very solid, it's very real. I said, well, go get an MRI, because the MRI is like thousands of little x-rays, and it didn't show up on the MRI. So it's basically invisible, yet it's in 3 dimensions. That's going to be a fascinating case for me.
But you know what? That's a little bit similar to mine, because the first implants that I was thinking that if I was having an implant, it has to be this one on my neck, because it's like a triangle shaped, and sometimes you can feel it very clearly, other times you can't feel it that clearly. And when I was taking the x-rays, you could see that little bump on the x-ray, but there was nothing inside.
Yep. Some things are biological. Some of what I've not told a lot of people, but I did mention it in my book, is that I told these doctors this, and they were all stunned, the 250 surgeons, when I did this presentation. That's one of the most important things that we're going to find in the future are not implants that are metallic or ceramic or any other material that we found. What we're going to find is some of these implants are in fact biological, and they're not going to show up on x-ray. They're going to be, they are literally the cells, in my opinion, once they're opened up, if we ever get to them, you're going to find CNS or central nervous system, basically brain cells, inside the biology of the implant. And boy, they just sit there stunned. They did not know what to say. I think we'll actually find that in the future.
That will make it even more difficult to expose them.
It will for a fact. But again, I would rather study them now in situ in the human body, if we think they're there and we can find them reasonably well, and then have them tested at a university at some place, so that we can actually find out what we're actually dealing with, what they actually do, what's the purpose beyond what we know.
I had this friend of mine that was saying it just for fun, that your implants, they are put in a way that you can be like a walking antenna. And I was thinking that, perhaps that's what it is, because there's so many things that I hear about, let's say, people that are training to become a yogi, they're meditation for years, they're all doing all this kind of stuff, so they can very easily, so they can enter this special kind of state in the brain. But for me, I have never done that, but I can, like that, do different kind of stuff.
Well, there are skills that abductees and contactees are capable of. And I use it in one of my presentations. I ask people about things that they learn or do and so on. I told them there's 6 reasons you're being picked up in these abduction accounts, 6 reasons. And I gave all 6 reasons. And then everybody says, well, I can do this, or I know that I can do that. I said, but the difference between you and what I'm talking about is you process information differently than other people. We're not saying we're bigger, better, taller than anybody. We're just saying we process data differently. And this one woman challenged me, and I said, well, at the time I said I have a 3rd-degree black belt in the martial arts, and she's, lots of people got black belts in the martial arts. And I said, yes, ma'am, but you probably had a teacher. I'm now a 4th-degree black belt, and I've never had a teacher in the martial arts ever. And it's not possible. I can just tell you right now, you can't do it. It's impossible. I process my data differently than other people. And by the same token, she will give me another example. I said, well, I said I was at New Mexico State University, was demonstrating walking over broken glass and running over broken glass, breaking rocks up to 35 pounds and so on, and with martial arts skills. And I said I taught myself at age 14 how to walk over fire. And he said, well, a lot of people done that. I said, I'm not talking about Tony Robbins teaching you how to walk over fire. I said, I was walking over fire when Tony Robbins was in diapers. He was a baby. I said, my point is, I don't process like other people. If I want to accomplish something and I need to, I'll end up doing it. And I don't know, I don't understand the mechanism behind all of that. But I said, many abductees, I've got a form I have them fill out, and they're the same way. There are things, we do things differently. There are 6 different areas we primarily function out of. Some of us out of only one area, some of us out of 2. I said, I learned things psychologically or physiologically with little or no training, like the martial arts, like developing skills. And this lady finally was so mad at me, she just says, well, what else? And I said, you know, I said, I like a challenge. And I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you. I said, I can transfer my abilities to other people if I want to. And I said, how would you like for us to build a big fire out here and me transfer my ability to you? Oh, she got quiet and she took off. That was the end of that story. So, so I like skeptics too. They're amusing people.
Yeah.
They
yeah.
got some problems.
Yeah, but you know what? I really understand the way that you are trying to explain how you are learning it, because I'm doing the same thing with my astrophysics. Because when I'm talking about it, I'm working with my astrophysics, that I'm putting it down to get in a book, and then they are starting to talk about that that I'm sitting there and turning and twisting my brain to figure out how everything works. And I said, you know what? I don't.
That's true. One of my abductees is,
it's like a film, and you understand it the first time.
yes.
It's not like you are reading a book, because if you're reading a book, then you have to go back and perhaps reading it again several times before you understand it. But when you're receiving it in this way, the information is getting it's like a part of you. So you know it, and you know it forever. So you can explain it in a whole different way.
That's true. One of my abductees is she's not educated, but she has taught herself all about botany, specifically about plants and flowers. And it's absolutely amazing. She can compete with anybody in the subject. It's just amazing to listen to her. And she just picks it up so fast. It's just amazing. And again, she doesn't process like other people. And we're not talking about people who got an education, went out and learned this, studied it, and did this, did all these different things. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people who don't process like other people. And it's just different. And I don't know how to explain it to people.
Yeah, because I know from my case, for me, I love to talk with people that are educated in this stuff, because especially if they're talking about stuff that they are struggling with, because sometimes they can go into a topic, and sometimes a word or a sentence or anything can trigger something in my mind, and then this starts to flow. So for me, I don't sit there and figure out what to say, or how do I do this, or how do I do that. It just comes straight through. So it was a very funny experience to have this very good discussions with professors that have been doing this for over 40 years. So they were giving me the problem, and I was giving them the answer, even if I didn't even look at the subject before this discussion. So
again, this to me is one of the things that we need to be testing people for when we do this intervention with the university and testing the implants, because I think there may be a link there that will be interesting. I really do.
And for me, it was a very, how to say, it was a very, very good confirmation. Is that the right word? Because for me, when I was in that conference in Bulgaria, I was just showing off one picture of the first thing that I was getting down when it comes to the astrophysics. There were the professors that were coming after me. I was not the one that was coming after them. And that's a good thing, because if I was completely out of nowhere, I guess they will not be interested at all. Yeah. And when that professor also saying that, you know what, We are standing for the old science. You are standing for the new one. I think that is a very, very good confirmation.
It is, and it's I had when I was in Slovakia doing a presentation, and there were a bunch of people from other countries there, and there were 3 scientists from Russia. And after I finished the presentation, they all walked up to me and looked at me and smiled and said, "You're ex-CIA." And I laughed and I said, "Yeah, and you're ex-KGB." Like, we all started laughing at each other. And I said, "Isn't it important that we all get together and share our information? This knowledge is not about our country. This knowledge is about humanity, and we should be sharing this stuff together. That's what we should be doing."
I see that the time is flying for us. It always does in a good conversation. Do you have some final things you would like to share with us?
The final thing is simply that I think that people who've had these experiences, whether they were negative or positive or whatever your event was, if you'd like to discuss it or like to share information, particularly physical evidence, you can write me at alienhunter.org, and you get me there and click on it and it'll automatically email me. If I don't email you back, it's because something went wrong and I didn't get your email. I always answer all my emails. So please write me, and I'll answer your questions as best I can. The work that we do is philanthropic. It is not, we don't do this to make money. I think the only two things I've got is 2 books and a video to sell if anybody's interested, or little black lights. But I will be in Europe September. I'll be in the United Kingdom, I'll be in Turkey, and I'll be in Italy as well. So at 2 different conferences there, and visiting friends in Slovakia. So I hope to see you all at any of these conferences. I'll be all over the US in conferences this year. Hopefully we'll get this college thing done and be able to fly you over to the university and get a lot of this stuff looked at and analyzed properly.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll just have to finish off and just remind people that go into our homepage and take a look on the GoFundMe project that I have been going on. I'm trying to rebuild 4 houses for 85 kids from the age of 7 to 14 years old in Dharamsala in northern India. So take a look at the project and hopefully do some donating too. So yeah, hopefully we'll see each other next week. Have a nice evening. And thank you, Derrel, for joining us.
Thank you.